Okay, but I guess the distinction still is then that was a decision based on some future revitalization that hadn't already happened? Or?
It was happening, according to the testimony I received.
And
the trees were there.
Okay, let's not get too much into the back and forth of it. I'll tell you what my concern is, and I agree that the A-Lab standards are a good place to start, but I'm concerned that they're perhaps not being given enough standing in the process. You know, A-Lab is they're an appointed body that does work similar to us. They spend a lot of time hashing out ag policy, and they're the board is made up of people who are active in agriculture and understand these issues. And when they come up with a list of standards, I feel like as a planning commissioner, my tendency is to want to defer to them. You know, they're staffed by the Ag Commissioner's office, and if that's what they say constitutes primary agriculture, that carries a lot of weight with me. And it appears as though, in at least the last 3 applications that have come forward, is that their determinations of primary ag have been essentially considered and then set aside. And I think I would like to see, as this process goes forward, I would like to see the A-Lab standards be the determining factor about whether or not the application meets the test of the requirement, as opposed to just a case-by-case determination by a variety of different hearing officers, because we don't, even the 3 applications we have before us, they were heard by different hearing officers. So that's how I'm feeling about the who and how determines a primary ag use of the site. I'd like to see that call made by the Ag Commissioner as they are implementing the standards set forth by A-Lab.
Again, two distinct different situations here with the permanent facilities and the temporary events. So was Ag Policy 6 specifically viewed from the temporary events perspective to apply it as stringently as it's proposed to be applied here for permanent facilities?
I think our department's view is yes, that the policy does apply whether it's just a use or whether it's a facility. If it's associated with visitor or retail commercial, the policy requires a primary ag use. A decision could be made that that primary ag use needs to be different based on whether it's permanent or temporary, certainly, but to date we haven't done that.
But has A-Lab spent the time looking at it from this perspective and this dilemma that we're struggling with here today, or was this not in the context of this new phenomenon with our area being a desirable area for the weddings?
Well, it was certainly well after our area became desirable for a wide variety of events. The A-Lab spent the majority of their time deliberating about what the standard should be, whether they should use a financial standard, what level of acreage it should be, whether some combination should be used, whether in the ag and open space element there's Appendix J, I believe, which is a production ag determination, whether that should be the deciding factor, whether people should self-certify themselves as having a primary ag use and government not get involved in looking at that. I mean, they looked at a wide variety. They didn't get into whether a site with one event should be treated differently than a site with 40 events.
So, I think it's here. We've all spoken. We're waiting to hear from you, Carlin.
Well, I guess I think I'm going with the Ag Department and A-Lab, just because it seems like it's been the thing that's been the most publicly discussed up till now. It has been in use for the last 4 years, it looks like, from 2005 or something like that. And I don't think fiscal measures are really workable for several reasons. I think there's some privacy issues, and I think it's too dependent on the economy and other kinds of variables to talk about looking at primary versus secondary in terms of fiscal measures, which is something that apparently has been considered. So I'm pretty comfortable with the A-Lab and the Ag Department approach, as being the way, not I say it's currently being done, and obviously if somebody wanted to look at it differently, then that's what they can do in the future. And I think that the need for flexibility that is obvious is always out there, because there's always something that doesn't quite fit in there. It sounds like the Ag Department has some acknowledgement of that, and I think some of the other places where flexibility or at least confusion is arising has to do with some of these other aspects, like grading, construction, incidental, secondary, those kinds of things. I don't really see that the planning and ag have a whole lot of difference in the agreement that there should be something called primary ag use currently happening on the ag land. I mean, that there has been a couple little, we have a couple of examples where it's a little confusing about whether, horses and that kind of thing, but from what staff said in the report from planning, there has been a number of situations where they've turned down applications because, again, ag and planning agreed that there wasn't a primary ag use first. But that, AG Policy 6 says there's got to be a primary ag use. That means current, that means now, that means not in the future, that means real. Can't be just some kind of, a tomato patch you put out a stand on. It's got to be real. So real, primary, commercial, use. And the measurements that A-Lab has come up with are a great place to start. All I can say.
How do you folks feel about that concept, as the A-Lab standards should govern?
Yeah, I think that's the best we have at the moment, and that's been worked up with a group that I respect. They're selected people that should know what in their field what
I would ask
feasible.
I would ask Ms. Knoll to comment on that to see if she sees any potential conflicts coming down the pike with that.
I just wanted to make a couple comments that the A-Lab criteria is relatively new. It was February of 2008, and the Ag Department has been using this criteria relatively recently, so we don't have a long history of using this criteria. And as you all know, we get very few temporary event applications. So we have only used this criteria on very few applications, and in my mind, we're starting to test this criteria, and we're having problems with it. So that was a point I wanted to make. The other for Commissioner White is when A-Lab looked at this criteria, it was specifically for ag events. It was a new type of event that was created to help other agriculturalists do specific events. It was similar to the wine industry events. It wasn't weddings. I did not attend those meetings, but it was specifically for ag events. I wanted to clarify that.